in Utah, California.
Yeah, I used to date a gal. Her husband was Bobby, used to date a California. I was probably 21 and started making about my ears off. You're a piece of shit. Man. What you're doing. Things out here about it, like cocktail parties, other people, stuff. I'm just a young kid, but my ears somehow pick up on it. Anyway,
it's
birds of a feather, just bullets.
Well, and I have seen I cannot believe how much first responders have been kicked to the curb by administration. You did your work because of the call. Nobody ever that I know says I want to be a fireman because I want a livable. It's a calling like law enforcement. And we have unfortunately over the years also lost sight of the fact that in our culture we don't operate as if it's a calling. It becomes a negotiation after negotiation. You don't have administration that actually comes out by speaking the fact, and then you also have guys that aren't doing what they're supposed to, and there's this constant back and forth going on. My dad was a union boss, and I was a union for a short while in the 90s, but I got out, and I see that the need for both, but it comes back down to we aren't treating each other the way we're supposed to be treating each other. So we wait for government to be a solution to everything, and once we give our sovereignty away, it's fine.
I'm 50. I'll be 55 next month. I think I learned. I don't want to be a politician. Who wants that job? So I take ownership of these. I call them F students that grew up for not stepping up. When I was a young lad, maybe I should have been in the pot to become a politician. Do something. I should have had it. Maybe because I'm smart, I didn't deal with corruption. I don't have that moral. My moral compass is jobless. And I don't use humans. I like to love humans. Who doesn't like to be loved?
Well, I think a lot of us were just trying to do our own thing. We're trying to take care of our families, which is originally what this country was founded on, individual liberty. And unfortunately, it became too financially beneficial for people not to be involved. And when we look at senators and congressmen that make millions of dollars while they're in office, nobody ever bats an eye on why is that? How do these guys leave richer than when they go in? And it's like the elephant in the room and nobody cares. We all know where it's coming from.
Yeah, I take ownership when I'm speaking up. My duty and happy.
So tell me about your career. Where did you start?
I started in the state of California, forestry. 7 years with them, and I was affected by affirmative action. I saw the movement, those white boys, DEI now they call it, right? So my first academy, they were training alongside me to 300-pound black lady, completely illiterate. They were reading everything to her, all the tests, all this was reading and passing the scores. I'm 21 years old going, what the heck is going on? She's ex-con. So they corrected her. So I blogged on that, and also she's basically in charge of someone's life and unable to read a medicine bottle. That's what's going through my brain. So I didn't get promoted to a permanent position. At that time, getting your paramedic license was the key to get into a permanent job. Because I was seasonal, right? Working 9 months out of the year. And then the city of Sacramento picked me up. So I got my job. And then spent my time working in the ghetto. I didn't like that city. I liked that commercial stuff. So I tested for a little bedroom community. I said, I did Folsom. Bedroom community called Eldorado Hills. And that's what I did 20 years there.
And you were a paramedic as well?
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
And then went to the ranks and ended up a captain. Right before I was trying to become a chief, and I pulled the plug at 52.
And over the mandates.
Pardon me?
You quit over the mandates, is that correct?
No, I quit because of the age and just the finances worked out with hers.
Understood. Okay. And then you landed up here.
Yeah.
Are you in Kootenai?
I mean, yeah, you know Harley Vegas?
I did.
Not 7 miles up off half.
Wow. Yeah, it's a beautiful area of the county.
This morning I was glassing on my beautiful white Zelle. It's awesome. This morning's beautiful. So yeah, that was my plan. We bought a piece of 40 acres in 2018 before all this equipment shit happened.
Thank you.
Then we built a house and I got an education on a sheet of OSB, cost me 80 bucks a sheet.
That must have been in 21.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm like, what in the world happened?
Yeah, I remember when I was buying it for $5 a sheet.
Correct.
So are you fully retired now, or you got any inside gigs? Or?
Not yet. Not yet.
How are you, brother?
Good to
Hey,
see
did
you.
you get a cup of coffee? Let's grab a ticket.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate you having us out.
I'll see you in just a second.
I'm finishing up building the house. So maybe next year I'll figure something out. I'll get the rest of it.
Yeah, you know, building has been tough the past couple of years. Of course, I'm in construction. I actually had my house built in 2020, 2021. And that was very, very difficult times. Yeah, for construction, not only supply chain, but cost of goods.
Cost of goods, the labor, guys quit. I'm just pulling my hair out. Anyway, what's your two construction jobs, may I ask? What do they do?
I own a commercial construction company where we do primarily medical tenant improvement. So we take care of one of the largest healthcare providers in the country. All their estates, all their campuses from the Cascades over to Idaho. I have contracts with DOD and also with the states of Washington. And so we do a lot of medical and government projects. And then I have a commercial cabinet shop where we build custom fixtures and cabinets that are throughout all sorts of medical and government offices. So yeah.
My wife, she used to be a residential. She's always got jobs.
Yeah, no, I was in residential in the very beginning, but then quickly changed to all commercial. So what kind of questions can I answer for you?
Heck, let's see. I know you're bringing up Bob Norris. I don't know him much, whether I've been trying to make one of his coffee talks. And I'm a neighbor of his opposing, what's his name? He ran against him last time.
Bauer?
Bauer, yeah.
Okay.
So he lives near us.
Captain Bauer? Yes.
And then he's got some choice words about Mr. Norris, so I don't know who to believe, right? I'm just a third party, just
Sure.
information.
Sure.
I'm trying to educate myself.
Sure.
That makes no sense.
Absolutely, and I think everybody should. I mean, nobody should ever take anybody just at the word. We're given a brain. We should be people of discernment, and so really, investigations into people is important.
Let me run this by you. When I'm sitting there sleeping with my gears going, I think the two prominent positions in this country that could really help save this country is priests, pastors, and sheriffs.
Yeah.
Would you agree on that? I don't know if that's because
So-
the power you have locally and the priests to get people, obviously I'm Christian.
Yeah. So I would agree with you. There's a spiritual component. I'm a believer in Jesus Christ. I've been since an early age, and I'm not ashamed of that. My worldview shapes how I view politics and how I view the Constitution, because we know that the founders were all men of faith. Now they had different varying degrees as to their faith, but they all believed in the same thing, which is the supreme creator that gave man his rights, life, liberty, and property. And so, without the church, we've seen the great revivals that have taken place across our country since its inception, and how those were key pivotal times for changing our country for the good. And so, I would agree with you that if we cannot get our clergy, our pastors, our priests, our rabbis to call for repentance and call for people to turn back to Judeo-Christian type values, I don't know how we can win this culture war, because the country was founded on people that have the same Christian and Judeo values. Yeah, that was a commonality between us all. And if you're dealing with cultural Marxists, it's very difficult to have any kind of relationship with people who hate the Bill of Rights. And so, yeah, I think that pastors and priests definitely play a crucial part, and your sheriff as well. The sheriff is the last line of defense for the people, and we forget that the founders, and especially when they argued them in the Federalist Papers, knew that there's supposed to be a separation of powers, not only laterally between the three branches, but also vertically. The federal government to the state, and even the state to the county. And at the county level, we are no less sovereign than they are at the federal and state level. So, yeah, if the sheriff isn't there to protect people's rights, secure their rights, we don't have much hope.
how you dealing with all the arrows with people saying, oh, no, you're not a police officer, you don't know the ranks and all that. I saw your thing, you're saying, proving your worth.
Yeah.
I'm not one of those guys that say you must have been, you needed to go through the ranks. I saw that with my guys sucking a bunch of dick to get their jobs because they couldn't do the job on the fire troop. Does that make sense?
It does.
Those that can't do it, teach. That's an old adage.
So I can tell you a
Anyway.
couple things. Having been an employer for almost 25 years, I learned very quickly that you don't take a carpenter and just automatically make him a superintendent. Just because you have a skill in one area doesn't mean that you are a good manager and or leader. You have to always look at people and their abilities and what motivates them, their discipline. So, yeah, I laugh because individuals that have been predominantly the opposition who are just trying, it's low-hanging fruit. They think that they can sway the people that don't know. People have been conned for years into thinking that a sheriff must be a tenured career law enforcement guy. And in the state of Idaho, there's only 3 things required to be a sheriff. A citizen of the United States, a citizen of the county for at least 1 year, and 21 years of age. The importance of an elected sheriff is glossed over by far too many. It's an elected position to represent the people. The undersheriff runs the day-to-day operations. And if we're going to call things out, let's call a spade a spade. The current undersheriff, the highest rank he ever achieved was corporal. So he doesn't even have command staff experience. I mean, he was a line supervisor. So anyway, but yeah, we just continue to put the message out and educate.
What you're telling me sounds like a ditch digger, a grunt, that's trying to run a command staff, which is completely different because of HR.
So I think leadership does not mean that you have to have done everything. It always helps because you have to have a baseline to understand and have empathy. I'm a huge fan of Jocko on Extreme Ownership. And he talks about this quite a bit, that when you're at the top, you need to get down with the line guys every once in a while to remember and see what they're seeing. Yeah. So anyway, I don't know if that answered your question, but I hope to be able to continue more conversations. You know how to reach out to us if you have more. And I would just say, stay strong and courageous. You know what we're facing, and if you're of good courage, all of us banding together will eventually be able to see this through. So, and we'll be able to do it without violence. We don't want violence. We want ideas and hard work to be able to help us turn around this runaway train. So, again, thank you, brother.
Yeah, we'll see what you have to say here.
All right, take care.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Long press. Long press it, we'll turn it on.
Hi.
Hi.
Good to see you. I stood next to you and your husband at one of Norris's town halls. You make the signs.
Well, he does.
Yeah, it's good to see you. Your husband was at our meeting last, I guess it was last Friday at the Pachyderms.
Yeah. They said they attacked you.
You know what? I got big shoulders.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
My name's Leslie.
Hi, Leslie. Good to see you again.
Nice to meet you. So we're eager to hear what you have to share. What's your plan here this morning?
Just having conversation. So you can ask me anything you want. Did you get a cup of coffee on us?
Well, I have had enough.
Okay.
Fred's over there getting some.
Yeah, no, we'd love to have a conversation. So if you have any questions or you want to discuss anything.
Well, I didn't get to hear you before.
Yeah.
So I've heard Norris. I heard it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I don't know, except last night Doreen gave me your Instagram, so I know a little bit.
Sure.
Anyway, talk to me. I mean,
He just following me around. We're all good. If you don't want to be on camera, that's okay too.
So why you're running?
Yeah.
And where are you from?
Yeah.
What's your background?
Sure.
All that stuff.
Sure. So one of the quickest ways to tell you, and I'll give you an answer now, but you can go to my website that lays all that out in case anything is missed here or if you want to remember anything. The icon.
I did.
You got one of those?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Give me one.
So I'm from this area. I was fourth generation over in Spokane Valley. I grew up on the original Antone Plant homestead, which had historical significance into this area. I started my carpentry apprenticeship in Kootenai County back in '92. I had grandparents that lived here in Post Falls. And I started my construction companies. I've been a commercial contractor for 25 years, almost 25. And so I started those around 2000. And in 2011, had the opportunity to go through a police academy. And I went through a police academy and became a commissioned reserve police officer. And I served with Spokane City for 4 years. And then I went to Liberty Lake where I was recruited, and I ended my reserve career out at Liberty Lake last March. So I served 8 years out there as a reserve police officer.
What's a reserve?
So reserve officer is somebody that in the middle of the day that's not working for the police department, is just a citizen. But when I go to work for the agency, I have full authority. That means I can do everything that a full-time police officer does. I just do it in a volunteer capacity. Yeah, so I did that for 12 years. I put thousands of hours into my community at no cost. I put on my Kevlar vest. I wrote my own reports. I did all functions that you would see a actual police officer, full-time police officer do. And I just did it part-time, and I trained every month the 4 hours required by law. So I put in a lot of time with those agencies for many years. So I have a great perspective on what it's like to be in law enforcement and understand the culture and the structure. But I also understand what it's like to have been in the private sector for the past 24 years, running companies like yourself, and understanding everything from managing budgets and personnel. In my line of work as a general contractor, I have been working for big contractors and big public entities for many years with complex projects where I have to bring in all sorts of subject matter experts and multidisciplines specifically to help me solve a problem. So I have to surround myself by very knowledgeable individuals to help me solve a problem, which is whatever construction project that we have to perform with all their different complexities. So because of all of my experience in working with the public, having employees, managing budgets, being fiscally conservative, taking care of my employees, law enforcement, I saw a direction that Kootenai County was heading with the current sheriff, and I'm in disagreement with it and decided that if nobody else was going to run, that I needed to.
So tell me about that.
Yeah.
What you were seeing.
Yeah. So we saw in 2020 an attempt to usurp all of our liberty with the COVID.
Oh, yeah.
And in addition, And you know, at the beginning of that, I knew that it was a scam. I was not a politician. I was a business owner. When they started saying we're going to lock things down, I told my wife, I'm like, this is an attempt to end run our liberty. I was
the only one.
right, but in the state of Washington, Jay Inslee shut everybody down.
You can feel it going across the border.
Yeah.
You can feel
yes,
the
you
fear.
could. You could.
A spirit of fear came upon anybody who complied with that.
Yeah.
It was faith over fear.
Yes, I agree.
What would you do if they imposed those again?
What would I do? Specifically, like what police action, law enforcement function? Well, we would never ever enforce any kind of a dictate whatsoever. I mean, dictates aren't laws. They're illegitimate. In my business, we never shut down. We gave them the double middle finger. I told my employees, if you are concerned and don't want to be here, we'll work with you however we can to support you. But as for our operations, we are not shutting down our work. We're going to continue. And we did. And we operated the entire time. In fact, I hired more people during the fake pandemic than I have before and since. And during this time, the city of Spokane, Mayor Nadine Woodward came and said, hey, we have 2 emergency COVID shelters we need built, and we are hoping you'll come in and help us. We don't have plans, we don't have all the logistics, but we were able to go in there and perform and take care of these very complex projects on budget, on time. And this was when supply chains were very short, manpower was tough. I mean, it was tough to do any kind of business, but we proceeded to complete all of our projects and honor our contracts. A couple years later, the state of Washington attempted to coerce us into supplying only vaccinated individuals for a contract I was under. We were on a hospital project where we did a remodel of some patient rooms and then a generator replacement project. And in August, September, we started getting letters from the state of Washington saying, if you are going to be working on our facilities, you must be vaccinated. And My belief on vaccinations is it's a personal choice. We don't tell you yes, we don't tell you no. I did have some office staff that chose to take a vaccine, and they did. That was their own family decision. They are. They've been sick a lot, but for the rest of those, that all of our field guys, none of them were vaccinated, and that's their personal choice. So, well, I told the hospital, I said, we don't have any guys that are unvaccinated. They have all exemptions. And they said, well, we want to see those exemptions. And I said, we're not giving them to you. All they have to do is verbally tell me. We don't require written. We're not playing that game. Well, we want to be the great decider as to whether or not these are legitimate exemptions. And I told them, no, we will not violate our people's First Amendment rights. We're not going to violate their Fourth Amendment rights. We're not going to participate. So you guys can pound sand if you want us to find individuals that are vaccinated, which in Washington State, I think it was less at that time than 16% of the entire Washington State construction workforce was actually vaccinated. I might have that figure off slightly, but I told them I'll renegotiate the contract with you guys because there was nothing stipulating in our contract with the state that we had to have these vaccines. So that's what we did is we gave them a proposal of what it would look like in order to renegotiate the contract, and what do you know, within a week's time they were saying, yeah, we're going to let you guys continue to work, but just don't go into this section of the hospital. So before I was ever a politician, I stood up for my people's rights.
And where was that hospital? Which one?
Dayton General Hospital. Yeah. So, you know, I think that
So but back to what you saw happening here with the sheriff's decision.
Yeah, so when you look at what I would call almost borderline tyranny, when you have government that comes in and starts telling people where you can or can't go, who you can or can't see, parties that you can or can't have, where you can or can't eat, businesses that can be open, businesses that must be closed. You can't take rent for X amount of months, but you still have to pay the mortgage. What we saw was outright tyranny. And we saw, you know, one of the things that I thought was fascinating is all these beta males that all of a sudden found their purpose in life to try to regulate guys that were wearing masks, you know, so they can come in and start telling you, hey, you're going to wear a mask and you know, I'm going to harass you because you have to wear a mask. In normal world, some of those guys would get punched in the mouth for coming up and trying to assert their authority, but this is how emboldened these people were.
Well, Dan, I don't know. We're in North Idaho.
Yeah.
A lot of the people we kind of frequent with this place and others, we didn't participate.
I agree, and we didn't either.
So I'm curious, really, what you were seeing. You know, you made a statement about what you were seeing with the sheriff's department, and I don't know what you're saying. So
part of that also is the illegal immigration that's coming across the border. So we've had basically 3 years. We knew that there was an attempted end run around the Constitution, and really, and I'll summarize this, we had the opportunity starting 3 years ago to start developing contingency plans to deal with the next usurpation.
Can we go back to the COVID issue?
Yes.
What would you have done differently that Sheriff Norris did?
Well, Sheriff Norris was not sheriff during the pandemic. He was a candidate. And in his early days, he actually issued a letter stating that he wouldn't prosecute anybody or arrest anybody. That was after he took office. Right. But that was also after most citizens like you in Kootenai County were saying we're not complying anyway. I mean, the mask stuff in Kootenai County, as I recall, ended right around May or June. People at that point were saying we're not going to comply. So it's very easy to come in and say, well, I'm going to issue this statement to a people that are already not going to comply. Yeah. Okay. So the fact of the matter is that in the very early stages, and like you said, you knew it was an attempted end run at the very beginning. But yet Norris came out and was actually chastising people for gathering in groups more than 10 people. He was telling us to trust the CDC, trust Panhandle Health. Yeah, and I've got that on my Instagram and Facebook. We actually have those clips. So what I would say is this. Bob Norris did not have good discernment at the very beginning. Pardon me? He did, really. Well, I would say that I mean, I would argue and say men of discernment that understand liberty should be able to look and see this stuff coming on the horizon and going, this isn't right. So that's my number one, argument with him. you can say afterwards, well, now we realize that we were being taken advantage of, but a man of liberty would have known that the minute they started saying 15 days to stop the spread. And so the other thing is with the illegal invasion, we should have been getting together, all of our county officials and state reps, to say, we know what's coming. We cannot enforce borders because that is a federal issue, but we have to secure this county against any kind of foreign or domestic threat. So what kind of things can we actually pass in order to strengthen law enforcement in the county?
I discovered your Instagram last night.
Yeah.
So my big question now is, what's your plan?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is, the first part of that is to gather with all local law enforcement, to gather up and form the task force, and to also bring in a citizen posse of vetted individuals. Because, you know, there's one part of trying now to keep all these guys out. We have no idea where they are, because we don't. But what we do know is that in the event that there is any kind of man-made disaster, we need to have ready, able men ready to come in and serve in whatever capacity is needed to secure the county.
How you mentioned vetted, ready, able to have an idea,
Right.
plan,
Right.
where you find them, who are they?
Well, again, we're now 3 years behind the curve. So in order to be able to facilitate this, there's a lot of heavy lifting that has to be done. So we get volunteers. We find out what their expertise is, whether, you know, they're former military, former law enforcement, engineers, all sorts. And then we go ahead.
Gun to lane.
Well, you know, and I've got a little bit I got a little bit of different perspective on the gun to lane that I'd love to talk. Well, number one, I'm always going to be for citizens standing up for their rights. That is our absolute fundamentally guaranteed right as citizens. We stand up for ourselves and our neighbors. But I'm concerned that thing might possibly have been actually a federal op. And, well...
Were you down here talking to people?
So I was not. But
well,
here...
part of the community, and I'm sorry, I just want to help you with your... People throw these objections at you. Might as well work through them now. So, living here for 20-some years,
right.
I mean, you kind of get to know who's who, and you also realize there's an awful lot of former police agents from California that have been here for decades and more coming.
Sure.
So, be careful with that. Because
well, I was giving you my opinion. Did you come downtown? I did not come downtown. I didn't come down on purpose.
Just so you know.
Yeah. So
you're getting a lot of pushback on that one.
Well, but I didn't even get a chance to say what I was saying before you gave me my pushback. So
sorry. Go ahead.
I mean, do we want to talk about the pandemic? Do we want to talk about the riots? What would you like to talk? Okay. So
what's your perspective on
my perspective is. So my perspective is I'm concerned that actually that might have been a federal operation where people were conned into coming down, doing something that's righteous and truly believed in it, but then subsequently they were being monitored and video captured by federal law enforcement.
That's our world, isn't it? I mean, January 6th.
Well, that's kind of my point.
Differently, I think that maybe the people who had instigated may have been federally.
Yeah, but all the things, you know, considered. That's why I'm saying is
the word about Antifa. Yeah. Okay. How's this community
The bottom line
going
is
to respond?
nobody got hurt that day. Yeah.
And we're lucky, right? Yeah. Because what happens when you have one bad actor in that group that starts something out?
It does show what's possible with a community militia, if you want to call it that. But
the law enforcement should have actually been heading all that up. I mean, there should have never been a point to where we lost control to where the citizens had to actually come in without law enforcement being there actually organizing that. I mean, the thing about it is why did the citizens actually have to come in and show their force?
I think it's because they have it in their heart.
So they just wanted to. Okay. So that's a different conversation.
Having been downtown and visiting and recognizing people, honestly, that really was the biggest takeaway we had, is that, wow, look at the community we have. And honestly, it did happen in Kalispell as well. They kind of followed suit and went, hey,
I'm going to ask you this.
It's sort of a lot of fun.
What's your response to that and all the people that responded to it?
Yeah, so we have already responded to that. And it is. And it's absolutely 100% false. Our attorneys have already sent a cease and desist on the criminal defamation that has occurred.
Did they receive it?
Best of our knowledge, we believe they have, yes.
So does that mean they have to abide by it? Or
We've given them 3 days notice, and then I'll let counsel actually answer that from that point forward.
So those are very serious.
They are. They absolutely are.
It's not just her. There are friends and family friends.
Yeah, we're very well aware of that. We have actually issued a podcast where we explain exactly what took place. So I have emails that are proof that it was collusion between a neighbor that was suing me for land and my stepdaughter. And the stepdaughter was being groomed by the neighbor lady. And I actually have the numerous emails that went back and forth where she was coaching my stepdaughter at that time on how to respond and the actions that she needed to take, and that she was turning me into CPS.
Open-minded enough to hear it.
Yeah.
But those are like red flags that I don't have with.
Sure. Well, then here's the other question then. If this were true, and I've already published my exoneration letter from CPS, it occurred in around 2007. Number one, 5 years later, I became a sworn police officer. I went through extensive background investigations and polygraphs. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's what I would respond to.
But I have a bias now that I didn't have before last night.
No, we understand.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, I understand
I
that.
tend to back away from people that have red flags.
Sure.
Especially your perspective is not all that different from Sheriff Norris, and he has experience and he's kind of proven himself.
What experience has he had?
Look at what he's done over the last few years.
Let me ask you, what has he done?
Just know him better.
Sure.
That's the other side.
Sure.
He's very well known, very well liked. I think it takes guts to run against him.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what your motivation is, but that takes guts.
What do you think my motivation is?
I don't know. I literally am learning about you recently.
Well, do you have any maybe thoughts of why you think I'm running?
Because you think you could do a better job than you would.
That's really what the reason is. And things are not going as well in the sheriff's office as what we're being told. I've had numerous deputies come up and explain to me.
Humans involved, it's never going to be.
Agreed, but it's not being, we're being told that everything is cohesive in there. I mean, there's some very serious things going on in the jail right now. And frankly, I'm surprised that nobody has actually come forward and squared with the public what's going on.
How would you address illegal immigration and fentanyl and all the drug-related arrests?
How would I deal with it more specifically?
What would you do differently?
On arrests?
Are those priorities? What are your priorities?
Right.
What are your top 5 priorities that you see the sheriff would need to address?
Yeah. Well, number one is we need to have an absolute audit of the sheriff's office by an independent auditor. We need to find out exactly where all the dollars are going.
Talk to me. I've had a couple people say there's some things being uncovered. Sounds like you're knowledgeable about that.
That I'm not what?
That you're knowledgeable?
That I'm not knowledgeable?
No.
Okay.
I said
Okay.
It sounds like you are.
Got it, yeah.
And you alluded to the jail. Talk to us if you.
Well, there's certain things that I got to be cautious because obviously I've been, before I make actual statements, I have to have 100% proof. But whistleblowers have been coming forward, and our team is working with multiple individuals that are in the know across the county that are involved in law enforcement, telling us exactly what's going on. But it takes time to be able to gather all the information to be able to accurately and to bring it out into the public to see. Yeah. So, whether it's there or dispatch, I mean, a lot of really tough things were going on at dispatch with manpower and forced overtime. Patrol deputies, complain about nepotism, and the nepotism goes as far as the Deputy Sheriff's Association and those that are part of the board, if you will, so leadership at the Deputy Sheriff's Association that also happen to coincide with promotions at command staff level in the sheriff's office. So, there's kind of pay-to-play type of atmosphere, which is the Deputy Sheriff's Association supports the sheriff and key individuals, and those are the same ones that are in his command staff, and that really should not be happening. The Captain Heil from the jail was a former president, and now he was promoted to jail captain. There was also an incident that took place where they piled up 7 county cars near Walmart due to some lady that was shoplifting. And
you know, those are things that people should have been disciplined for and weren't, and instead they get promotions. So there's all sorts of things that are going on inside that really are not proper, and they need to be cleaned up. The culture needs to be cleaned up. The nepotism needs to be gone. In fact, there needs to be a policy that the Deputy Sheriff's Association doesn't get involved in politics, because why in the world would you, as citizens in a community, want the police officers being able to take in campaign donations through their PACs and being able to give that money to the guy that they want in office? I think it's a conflict of interest. I don't know about you, but do you feel the same way? I mean, do we want employees of politicians being able to support them monetarily? Yeah. So that's just you know, some of those things going on.
The answer is no, we wouldn't.
Well, I don't.
There are certain situations. I'd have to get more information.
Yeah, but I mean, even any of the employees, if it's county commissioners, if it's the coroner.
When you say nepotism, can you be more specific?
Well, yeah, giving favors to people that align with you that are your supporters, friends. It's not just family members. So nepotism is basically a pay to play. Pardon me? Who would I do that to? I have no family. I have no family in law enforcement. So no, I'm not going to participate in nepotism.
So there are families within the law enforcement.
Yeah, but it's not just, nepotism is not just family members. It is also people that are aligned with you that are friends outside of the work. And so we need to make certain that the best qualified people are holding positions of supervision inside the sheriff's office.
Qualified, but also people of integrity.
Agreed.
We have a person supposedly with a lot of experience in the White House.
Yeah.
I'm just not in favor of experience over character and integrity, which need both.
And you know, the deputies know this. The deputies know.
I understand.
Don't start with
I agree with that. At the same time, he's going to be supervising 300 employees or something in the sheriff's department, something like that.
And you know, one of the things that I continually am hearing is there is favoritism inside the office, which means if you're aligned with him, then you're in the club, and if you don't align with him, then you're punished.
Our whole world is divided.
Well, I understand that, but remember, in law enforcement, similar to clergy, teachers, people are called to these jobs, and we need to remind our deputies that it's a calling, not a job.
Any situation in which that favor, as you're referring to, has resulted in somebody getting away with something that they shouldn't have, or done something illegal, or you know what I mean?
Yes, again, those are things that we are working to actually be able to produce to the people, but yes.
Will that come out prior to the election?
Oh, yes. Yeah. And then, you know, there's other questions that need to be asked too, as far as integrity issues. So, candidate Norris in 2020, when he was running, received $4,000 from Tam's Burgers out of Los Angeles. So a hamburger chain out of Los Angeles gave Bob Norris $4,000 in donations.
Is that legal?
Well, that's the question, right? So legal, but here's where the smoking gun is. At the time, Captain Bauer, that was running against Norris from LASD, went on the record to say, hey, this hamburger chain is known for laundering money. It's been suspected of laundering political funds for quite a long time, and he was ignored. Well, January 11th of this year, the Los Angeles Times finally ran an article where they outed Tam's Burgers as having been involved by their employees in giving straw man donations through Tam's Hamburgers. In fact, Tam's, T-A-M-S. And in fact, former Sheriff Alex Villanueva, who is now running for county supervisor in Los Angeles, he actually pled, I believe, guilty to 2 misdemeanors for accepting money, illegal campaign funds. So I have to ask you this question. How is it that it's just a coincidence that this individual gets $4,000 from a hamburger chain that Captain Bauer was saying 4 years ago is laundering money to candidates, and he was basically shut down and ignored, and now we find out just a month ago that in fact it was, and the hamburger chain was fined, and people, you know, were charged with crimes.
Is there anything to indicate Sheriff Norris knew that?
again, it was alleged, and he didn't really answer the question. So, you know, where there's smoke, a lot of times there's fire. But how likely is it that out of all of the establishments in Los Angeles, you're going to get donations from one place? I mean, go back in its financials and see, is there any other businesses out of Los Angeles? It is, yeah. And I believe that would have been on or around the October, November 2020. It actually would have been probably the October filing. The other thing that we need to ask is, the sheriff has continually said that he held these high clearances because he worked, I believe, under Homeland Security when he was at the sheriff's office. So he was in charge of, I think he was a sergeant, specifically under the Homeland Security arm of the sheriff's office. He talks about all these high-level security clearances that he has, and yet he took $3,000 of his campaign funds in 2019 to hire Reputation Defender, which is an internet service that scrubs information about you offline. So I want to ask people of reasonable minds to answer this question. If you hold high-level security clearances in the government, you have to meet a certain threshold as far as your conduct and behavior. Otherwise, you don't get your clearances.
I wish.
So the question is then, if you held these high clearances, why in the world would you then have to spend $3,000 campaign dollars to an internet service to scrub information?
Depends what's on the internet.
Right.
Not everything there is true. You know that.
But anybody can Google anything about me. I have nothing to hide. I'll never pay for a service. I mean, anybody can look anything up about me at any time. I have nothing to hide. People have said mean things about me. I mean, obviously, but I'm not going to try to scrub the internet of information, because the people need to be able to look through and ask the questions. Similar to what you did earlier when you asked me, are these allegations true? So again, we need to ask ourselves, if we have a high-speed, high-level, supervisor at Los Angeles County Sheriff's Office, and he's run on that record, then why in the world is he spending money to scrub information about him? It should have been open to everybody. He should be pretty clean. Yeah. But these are just some of the questions I have, and they haven't been answered. And I think, no, we're looking forward to a debate. We want a debate. Yeah, absolutely. So we've gone all over the place. You got questions? I don't want to just consolidate. Yes, sir.
What's your view on civil asset forfeiture?
I'm not a fan. I think it's an end run around the Constitution. I've never been a fan of it, and specifically because it cuts out due process. I understand that during the drug wars, they made the argument, and obviously it's been adopted, but I think that there's too many pitfalls. I think that everybody deserves their day in court, and after a conviction, then obviously you can seize those assets under law and use them however you need to. But otherwise, I don't think that civil forfeiture is something that we should be participating in. That is my personally held belief.
Second question, given the fact we're at $34 trillion in debt now, and they just passed another $95 billion, citizens that are refusing to pay federal income tax, any taxes on the federal side, say the IRS decides to start seizing properties, you as sheriff, would you back the citizens and the right to keep their property versus federal three-letter agencies coming in and trying to...
Yeah, that is a hard question to answer, and I'll tell you why, because it's multifaceted, right? There isn't going to be any one situation that's going to be the same. We will always protect our citizens against an out-of-control, unaccountable state or federal government, and each situation is going to be unique. But I'm absolutely pro-people. I'm pro-personal liberty. My entire life, I'm a self-made, successful businessman. I've never received one dime in any state or federal dollars, to include during the pandemic. I never took one dime of any of the payday protection loans. I'm a free man. I'm owned by nobody, and I believe in everybody's individual rights to be free and unmolested by the government. So don't know if that answers your question, but
I mean, I haven't made up my mind, so
sure, understood.
Border Patrol and the attorney, prosecuting attorney.
Sam Mortensen?
Relationship with them?
We are working inroads on that. Yes, haven't spoke to them directly, but we are definitely making inroads. There's a lot of obviously political people in this town, elected officials, so getting on everyone's dockets to be able to have face-to-faces is not as easy as, going there the very next day. So.
Is that a priority? Or
Oh, absolutely. No, I think that we're facing priorities of all sorts of magnitude. So yes, making inroads. I have made inroads. In fact, part of the things that I'm being told about the way things are being run in the sheriff's office and some of the behaviors have come directly from elected officials. So people that are in the know specifically are coming and telling me, and I have made many inroads with local elected officials. No, not yet. Yeah, not yet. Not yet. There's people that are afraid. I mean, people are afraid to tell the truth. Yeah.
When you're being threatened for supporting a certain candidate.
Yeah. Other questions, sir?
All the illegals that we're seeing showing up on these white buses now around the area. Excuse me? What has to be? We're just seeing we saw a white bus pull up and it dumped a lot of older teen that appeared to mid-30s.
Do you know what he's talking about?
Yes, I do.
What do you think it is?
Well, I think that if we're objective, reasonable people, which we all are, right? We see what's going on. We know that millions are coming across our border. A couple weeks ago, I myself was down at the border. I think, did you see any of those videos?
What was that?
My videos when I was down at the border a couple weeks ago. Anybody know who Sheriff Mark Lamb is, the American Sheriff? Okay, so I called Mark Lamb back the end of last year, and I said, I want to see firsthand exactly what's going on. And he invited me down. My wife Donna and I and his son Cade Lamb went down for 14 hours on the Arizona border, all the way from Lukeville to Sassabee. In Sassabee camp, we found an NGO-run camp where the one terrorist that said, you don't know who I am, but you will know, we were in that camp the day prior to that video. So I firsthand saw the invasion of these military-aged males.
About buses coming into Idaho.
No, and I'm explaining that. So part of the issue is we know that they're here. We know that they're being distributed throughout the entire United States. The problem is that we don't have a offensive plan in Kootenai County, which is we need to be able, we can't enforce border laws. Yes, yeah.
The next question is going to be, what do you see? What do you see the handling of the already illegals that are here versus what are we going to do about it? To preserve what Kootenai County and North Idaho is all about, has been for decades.
So I think we make ourselves such an undesirable place for these individuals to reside, and you do that by having a good offense. We have laws right now that we can use in order to stop these buses and these vans that are facilitating people, and whatever charge is warranted, whether it's human trafficking, whether it's kidnapping, laundering, racketeering, we have all sorts of different laws that can fit each situation. And we start going after the NGOs, because understand that this problem is not just people coming across the border and then making their way. They are being aided and abetted by not only the federal government, but the federal government is giving like $1.5 billion to NGOs who then are taking this money and they're distributing it to all of these individuals. And so if we start going after the NGOs, anybody that tries to circumvent our laws and make it very, very difficult, seize vehicles, sue, we start making at a very first level it very undesirable for these actions to take place in Kootenai County.
Are you for or against employers being identified as hiring illegals?
Am I against it?
Or for?
So how would that look? I want to make sure I'm understanding your question.
We have employers that are knowingly hiring illegal immigrants to work in fields and ranches. Are you in favor of them being identified?
Oh, heck yeah. If they're breaking the law, absolutely. Anybody that is, we're for equal protection under the law. So if we have people that are subverting our laws for their own financial gain, because why are they doing it? They're doing it because of their bottom line, right?
So Sheriff Norris last night said that those people that are being dropped off, that he knows, he can't verify that any of them are illegal. Many of them have been detained, are here awaiting trial or whatever, like they're not here. They are illegal sometimes, but not.
That's all you got to say with that quote.
But they're not being transported from the border, or being either they were held in custody, or there's some reason why they were held.
Good to see you, sir.
Let off where they can be safe. It's not.
I'm hoping Liberty's going to be there tonight.
Sounds good.
Into the
trying to get
You're already here, got arrested
Sounds good.
for something. So it's different.
Did he track the buses? Does he know where the buses are sourced from?
No,
Okay.
no.
So you know, back in on January 31st, I had my town hall where I showed my videos from the border, and in this town hall, I called for a task force made up of local government officials, state representatives, attorneys, so that we can actually start coming up with our own way of dealing with this legally. Because we know that we're going to be sued. We know there's going to be all sorts of court challenges, but we have enough smart people that if our federal government is not going to take care of it, then you have to ask, why isn't the state government empowering us? And my answer to that is, when we receive 40% of our budget, operating budget every year in the state of Idaho from the federal government, there's your answer as to why we're not coming up with a solution at the state level.
Sheriff Norris says it's civil lawsuits that cost millions of dollars.
Well, you know, I mean, there's at some point, what are we? Sometimes the decisions we make have consequences, and those consequences have to be weighed by people to say, what is it worth? Is it worth to continue suffering an evil while it's still sufferable, like Thomas Jefferson said? Or do we actually say, nope, it's now time to take these steps to say we are enacting our sovereignty, we're declaring it, and you can tie us up in court all you want. Look at Biden. Biden was struck down on the decision to grant, basically wipe out all student loans, right? So the Supreme Court said, no, you're not going to do that. But he went right back around and he did it anyway, and is attempting to do it under a different program, right? These people don't care about the rule of law. So we have to ask ourselves, are we going to still continue to play the same game over and over and over again, which, you know, the Marxists are using against us, or are we going to draw a line in the sand and say, no, we're going to do this, and we'll let the courts settle it maybe eventually, but right now we're going to protect our people.
How do you prioritize who you're going with?
Well, I think that's part of bringing in your task force of people to help advise. I mean, we have great police chiefs all around here that are involved in this fight. It's not just one man that comes up with a solution. It is one man that brings everybody together and says, Chief at Spirit Lake, what is your experience? Chief in Post Falls, what's your experience? Coeur d'Alene, what's your experience? You bring all of these individuals together and you start coming up with priorities and solutions, and you get multiple people from the community that have other expertise to weigh in. This is a community problem, but the sheriff as leader needs to be calling these individuals together to say, hey, there's a problem here, nobody's fixing it. My job as sheriff is to secure this county, and so I'm going to take the lead like I should be, because the protection of this county is my number one priority. Come join me, start telling. In my construction world, we have these multiple complex projects. Most of the time, I don't have a full set of documents to just bid like a lot of contractors do that build a building from the ground up. We're working on projects that are evolving as we're doing them because they're complex. And the only way that we are able to accurately and adequately take care of these projects is we have to bring in experts that know things that I don't know. I have to be able to say, hey, you're an expert in structural, come in here and help us fix this solution. And I am so well versed at being able to bring in experts from multiple fields and disciplines that I can tell you that when I'm sitting in the office of sheriff, I'm going to be inviting experts from all over the region to help us all figure out solutions to these problems that no politicians has bothered to do. When you keep it inside the agencies forever, you're never going to get a different results. Businessmen know that you have to bring things from outside of your inner circle in order to get new perspective. Things change, technologies change, personnel changes, our culture changes. All these things affect us on how we can adequately do our job. And to keep it.
What kind of professionals would you collaborate with to create those solutions?
Again, it would be state senators, it would be state representatives, it would be civil rights attorneys, it would be county commissioners, be former law enforcement. I mean, I could give you a long list, but it's going to be a robust list of individuals that will be invited in order to help us. And of course, our chiefs. You know, our chiefs have a vast...
Sorry to interrupt. Does Mr. Norris have a plan at all set up?
None that I've ever heard. I've heard that he allude to things, but he never actually says what he's going to do.
If I go talk to him right now, what do you think he'd tell me on his plan on protecting our community from the illegals?
Well, if you listen to his 3 pastors podcast put out by the Athol Baptist Church a couple weeks ago, he alluded that, you know, maybe, at least this is my interpretation of it, so I'm not giving a direct quote, but it was alluded to that there would be a group of people that might form a blockade to keep them out. Now,
doesn't have a posse ready to go?
He doesn't, but you know, it's interesting that after we announced our campaign strategy of forming a citizens posse of vetted individuals, a couple weeks later, the sheriff had the exact same, almost verbatim, plan that he rolled out. And look, anybody that's talked to me for the past year, including elected officials that I met with one-on-one, they knew that one of my top priorities was to bring a citizens posse into Kootenai County by vetted individuals. We're not giving these guys guns and badges because I know that freaks people out. But, you know, I was told by state reps, oh, don't talk about a posse. You'll be considered an extremist. But people have known for a long time in this community that I've talked to that the citizen posse was going to be something that I'm going to implement. And Mark Lamb has done this very well down in Pinal County, Arizona, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel. But anyway, so I'm glad that the sheriff has finally caught my lead and decided to also adopt it because it's a win for the community. I would caution people, though, on his plan of signing up on a website to be a volunteer for a posse. I think that that's dangerous. I don't think we should be keeping any list of our posse volunteers or citizen volunteers on any kind of internet accessible database. I don't know about you, but I don't trust the internet. Does anybody here trust the internet? And would you want to be on a list that is accessible by all sorts of?
Probably already are.
Well,
True statement.
Dan, as I said before,
yeah.
what would be a game plan for dealing with our Supreme Court states that transients living anywhere on the streets, as long as they're not on private property, begging for money, is all legal now. In the state of Idaho, we cannot, law enforcement cannot touch them unless they are
performing
private property. But they can perform, they can do everything. The only thing you can do is if they're on your private property, ask them to leave and then trespass them if they refuse. Right? Mm-hmm. So obviously that brings a lot of problems into our community.
Yeah, it does.
People travel here in the summertime. Fakely perform to get money.
Right.
They don't have real jobs. They're coming in and causing problems. So what would we do about that?
That's something you have to, again, take up with the state legislators. I enforce the law. I protect people's rights. Obviously, if they're on personal property and they're violating, trespassing, then we can deal with them. But, part of the mess that we're in right now is because politicians are not looking out for the people. Look, we always want to, in America, take care of vulnerable individuals. I have a vulnerable daughter. I can't tell you how personally I take vulnerable individuals. That is our number one job in this society of justice, is protecting those that can't protect themselves. You have people that are more concerned about taking care of others that aren't contributing to society, that are causing problems, that have drug addictions or whatever other issues they're facing, being able to deprive us of our ability to not have to deal with these nuisances, right? So I'm very concerned about how woke we've become, even in Idaho, towards not having a balance of what is actually good for the community versus the individuals that don't want to participate in the crime and the mess that these individuals bring. And I don't want to listen to somebody playing a ukulele when I'm driving to Costco. I mean, I dealt with this quite a bit over in Liberty Lake because it was similar, but that would be my answer.
You said that you're willing to bring in professionals from all disciplines. Me personally, I feel that the police force collectively, not just here, but across coast to coast, is complacent, very complacent. And I feel it's due to ill training, lack of training. Departments will push recruits through a post program or an academy of their design. Badge gun, you passed, there you go. And I have friends across the U.S. that I served with in the Marine Corps that are law enforcement, and they are taken back how little training is mandatory to carry a firearm. And that's why you see on the news, so-and-so, police officer or whatever, shoots so-and-so because he felt threatened because he was twice his size. You have 3 things on your belt that you could have used for non-lethals, and the first thing you did was grab that gun. Probably because that guy's never even been in a schoolyard fight, right? As a sheriff, are you going to be willing to up that training and have more confident officers? This way the people can be confident in, I can't speak for Post Falls or CDA, but if a deputy shows up at my front door and says, that guy's going to know what he's doing.
Sure.
And he's going to, my life feels safe in his hands.
That is an outstanding question, without a doubt. Having been in law enforcement, I can tell you we never get trained enough. One agency that did very well was Spokane City. They are kind of the tip of the spear in the region for training. So I experienced firsthand excellent training when I was with SPD. Smaller agencies have more issues with budgets, and sometimes those training funds are not allotted correctly. I don't know in the case of Kootenai County what the budgets are being spent on and what the training, but I can tell you that I will be dedicated to providing deputies the most upstanding training that they need on a continual basis that meets and exceeds what the state requirements are. We are also going to make certain that our deputies have every resource that they need in order to effectively and safely carry out their duties. And you know, there's lots of other options rather than lethal force. I can't speak to the situations you were talking about, but I'm a huge fan in cops learning jiu-jitsu. Now, when I first started in 2011, we had defensive tactics and striking and, you know, some holds, but we were never taught the ground game. And I will tell you firsthand, is there anybody in here that rolls jiu-jitsu or ever has?
My son-in-law's
Okay, so you know then, okay. So if we want to make things safer for our officers and our deputies, I would really, I'm going to promote that our deputies learn basic jiu-jitsu. There's programs called, it's the Blue Belt. Does anybody remember it's not Back the Blue, but it's Adopt a Cop type of thing, where there are sponsorships for law enforcement officers to be able to learn how to grapple. And the reason that is important, as you said, a guy that's never been punched, everything's scary, right?
Right, exactly.
And I agree with you. So jiu-jitsu gives individuals a confidence on how to meet a confrontation and how to safely de-escalate that for a positive outcome. I will never second guess, though, if a deputy uses lethal force, because we're held to the Supreme Court's objective reasonableness standard. And that objective reasonableness standard is the benchmark that all case law is formed off of. And so it's easy for us after the fact to be able to armchair quarterback a decision by an officer. But I think that one of the things that we have a benefit of now that we did not even when I started is the body cameras. And we now see a lot of interactions between law enforcement and citizens, and we can learn from these in order to figure out how to better train for all sorts of situations. But I agree.
That goes for not just, you know, non-lethal or lethal training, but like first aid, trauma.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
My old man was a stater for I don't know how many years, right? What's that? State Patrol. Yeah, he was with Washington State Patrol. And he showed up on scene, and he's obviously been trained by the department or whatever, and he lost a little girl because he didn't know how to give proper CPR to a child.
Yeah.
He tried,
Yeah.
but it wasn't the correct way, and lost that little girl.
Yeah.
You know, and he beat himself up over it for years, saying if I would have just gone out and took personally my own time and how to render first aid to a child on my own dollar, whatever, I would have been able to possibly have a different outcome.
Sure. No, I totally agree.
I've been through numerous CPR classes, basic CPR, right? I've been through advanced as well. And the basics, they teach some good stuff, but they don't teach good enough stuff. Like, sure, you can give CPR to anybody, but these practice dummies or a volunteer from the crowd is usually a person that's 180 pounds.
Right.
What about someone that's 400 pounds?
Yeah.
What about someone that's in the passenger seat? They tell you, well, don't move someone if they're injured, but give them CPR.
Right.
Oh, he's in the
Right.
passenger seat.
Right. Yeah.
I know they ain't teaching stuff like that.
Yeah.
In the department. I know they're not.
Yeah. So in-service training is that, you know, monthly training that all law enforcement is required to do. When I was a a reserve. It was 4 hours per month. And it could be as simple as a CPR refresher course or first aid. It could be firearms training. It could be taser training. It could be case law. Cops that are really good cops that are called and they remember that it's a calling, not a job, will take their own money to continue training with things that are outside of the agency. I mean, we should be providing a level of training for our deputies that gives them the adequate tools they need to safely secure people's rights in the county. But, you know, I was a reserve and I spent thousands of dollars and tons of time on my own, in addition to my volunteer service, to become better at combat casualty care, how to apply CAT tourniquets, how to do hemostatic agents for, you know, quick clot. I learned advanced carving techniques and search and low light. In other words, there is also a personal responsibility that each deputy should also be participating in. When I was a tradesman, if I wanted to learn something more, I actually went to a school to advance myself and my knowledge. And I think that we can't just always say that it's 100% the responsibility of the agency to provide it, because if you're truly called, you should be invested enough in your own safety and those that you take care of to invest in additional classes, and they're everywhere in the Pacific Northwest. So,
Like any other job.
yeah, exactly.
So, kind of on this safety, so if you or anyone on your crew came across a car accident and it was a teenage child, what is your policy on making sure that they get a hold of their parents or their parents are notified? I'm only asking because my 16-year-old daughter was rear-ended in an area where she had no cell phone service.
Sure.
The police left her on the side of the road. She got picked up 5 hours later by one of her friends, got to cell phone service to get us a call. So I already know that current policies, they are not notifying parents when a child is in a car accident. She told them, I'm okay, I don't need medical service. 16 years old.
Where was this at?
Spirit Lake Cutoff Road.
Okay.
Right,
so was it what?
State Trooper response.
Okay.
Dispatch never called us.
So obviously I can't speak on behalf of other agencies, but I can tell you that there should be a policy. I've not reviewed that policy of Kootenai County Sheriff's Office, but these are great things that you share with us, that if we don't currently have a policy, which we should, that we would definitely look at that as being something that is best practice and should be done. So I'm a father of a 16-year-old girl, and I'd be furious if that happened to her and she was left. So
no, we've definitely talked to the Idaho State Police quite a bit since then on that. But I mean, with where we live at, we could see Kootenai County Sheriff more often than we'll see Idaho State Police. So I would just want to make sure if my 17-year-old or my 16-year-old does end up getting in another car accident, and there's a way for us to get notified, and there's a policy.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a minor, I mean, you're a minor, and you should. I would frequently, when I came into these situations, even if the kid was getting a ticket, I would be calling his folks up, and I'd be going, hey, this is Officer Wilson, this is what took place, what do you want to happen, right? Because you're a minor and you don't have the authority to make certain decisions. So I would have, if it would have been me, I would say, well, you don't have a right to say you're okay. I'm also going to call your parents so that they can make the determination. So,
I appreciate that.
Thanks for bringing that up. Great question. Sir.
What would your advice be to a graduating senior or seniors that have a pretty good interest in law enforcement? They want to get involved either locally or sheriff. 3 of the 4 have done ride-alongs with Coeur d'Alene, Post Falls, and the Kootenai Sheriff. Right now, the 3 that did ride-alongs with the Kootenai Sheriff are very discouraged by the ride-alongs and the lack of motivation.
Sure.
By the ones in the car that they were riding along with.
Sure.
Very discouraged from the conversations that didn't happen.
Sure.
A little bit that did happen.
Sure.
So what would your advice be to graduating seniors going with the fact that you'll be replacing Norris?
Yeah.
What would be some advice to give to them they're leaning toward the sheriff department more than the city?
Sure.
So what would be your advice to them moving forward from this point?
To be righteous, meaning that if you want to be in law enforcement, that means something inside you says, I have a desire to take care of people and I want to see justice. So first of all, stay of good courage. It's a rough road when you're that age. Things are, you're just figuring things out, but pursue it. Pursue being in top physical condition. Pursue in studying the Constitution and state laws. Pursue firearms training. Make certain that you know how to speak in a group for oral boards, but make certain that you are setting yourself up to be able to take the test, the application, and to be able to be an accepted candidate into an academy. And I say that despite what current culture may be, which I have heard the same things that you've said, remember, it needs to be a culture of a calling, not a job. And people need to be reminded that cops are warriors. We are there in order to take care of those that can't take care of themselves, and it's not just a job. But things will change. We're going to change this culture. We're going to remind the people, the men and women that serve, exactly why they're there. And we're going to give them those resources in order to be leaders themselves. But hold the course and just continue to immerse themselves in as much information as possible. And don't give up. If they get rejected the first time, do it again and again and again.
Are there any resources that you know of that would be models of how local law enforcement should or could learn about domestic abuse in Idaho?
Domestic abuse? Well, yeah, I think that there are programs throughout all the continental U.S. In Washington, we had programs that were brought out where we learned pre-violence indicators, strangulations. A lot of times victims of domestic violence are strangled, and you can't just see red marks on somebody and realize that somebody has been abused, right? So there's all sorts of things and techniques that I learned that I would assume would be the same here. But there's programs throughout all the continental U.S. on how to. No, not particularly. Yeah, and I think that every one of them should be up for annual review to see if they're still aligning with the values of Kootenai County. Because remember that all these programs also have agendas, the different organizations that run them, and we may find somebody that we like right now, but 2 years from now it may not be the same thing.
Are there any programs for offenders here?
For who?
For offenders. But if we don't help them, they're going to...
Yeah, we have to help the offenders that are caught up in the violent cycle. I don't know specific ones. I know that Union Gospel Mission does some of these for victims as well. Yeah, right.
If we don't address it, well,
right.
Very racist or sexist here.
Yeah.
I don't see programs for perpetrators.
Yeah.
I'm from Massachusetts. Sometimes it just makes them better at music.
Sure.
But sometimes it helps.
Yeah. No, great points, and I think that again is something that should be brought up, and we can look all sorts of great ideas now. Any other questions?
Now, fast forward to let's say you become the sheriff.
Let's say, or when I am. Okay. All right.
What would you do because you'll be leading a large and very growing department.
Yeah.
Kootenai County is growing. And you'll be coming in as, with police training, but not from a sheriff's office.
Yeah.
What will you do to gain the respect of all of those sheriff deputies that would be losing a guy that they definitely seem like they're respecting or following?
Sure.
Because that would probably be, in my mind, as a leader, that would probably be one of your biggest tasks.
Yeah. So the assumption is that the majority of them are fans of the current sheriff. And do you know that for certain?
I'm saying the perception. Public perception is that they are.
So I think it's like anything. Extreme ownership is the model that I operate off of, and that's Jocko Willink. He's a command sealer. And so in my own company, all of our employees go through the Extreme Ownership Academy on a monthly basis, because what we do is we create junior leaders throughout our organization that we enable our people to be decentralized and have a share in the mission of what they're doing. So we bring back a culture of ownership throughout the entire agency, and you have to, as a leader, come in as a humble individual. I already understand, I don't know a lot of these guys. Some of them I know. But you know, whenever you have a change, even at the top in the corporate world, we get new bosses that come in, but the very first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to forge relationships with people. I'm a guy that operates off of merit, not because somebody agrees with me or does what I say. I want people that are very good at what they do, elevated to the task that they are best suited for.
Have you met with any of the county commissioners?
Well, yes, I have. Yeah. And I'll keep those private, but I have, absolutely. I have one county commissioner that is not a fan of mine because he happens to be the current campaign manager of Sheriff Norris, and he has a special cross-deputization, which is, to me, a conflict of interest, right? But back to your question. Look, I'm going to come in there and I'm going to have a conversation with all of them. And I'm going to lay out exactly what the objective is of securing the county. And I'm going to listen to them. What do you need? What is running good? What isn't running good? I've already posted this out on my social media. If you guys have ideas on things that need to change, if you are current or former employees, tell me. Again, from my perspective as a business owner, I always have to listen to my guys in the field telling me what they need for me in order to support them to do what they need to do. So it's not going to be a quick solution, but I absolutely guarantee you that I'm going to make inroads if they are willing. I can't do anything if they're dead set against not working with me. There's nothing I can do. In fact, today I was messaged by a member from the community saying the deputy sheriffs are spreading a rumor that you were fired from Liberty Lake Police Department. And I was not fired from Liberty Lake Police Department. In fact, I received an award from Liberty Lake Police Department back in December for my years of service. But we have to ask ourselves the question, who is spreading those rumors and why? Is it possible that there are those that are afraid that once I become sheriff that maybe I'm going to be looking into things that maybe are questionable? I don't know. But I guarantee you I am going to go in and I'm going to be searching things top to bottom. And if there is anything that is below board, it's going to be dealt with. So the deputies will know that I will absolutely support them. I'm going to equip them, and I'm going to enable them to be the leaders that they can be if they so choose to do that.
Are you getting response from people saying what needs to change? Or what
Oh yeah. In fact, I can't even keep it. So I'm not a social media guy. My Instagram account is co-managed by my wife, who is an expert. So sometimes on that I respond, sometimes she does, but all the other media stuff is handled by her. I can't even keep up anymore with the messages I receive. And they aren't just messages from here locally, and they also send us emails and they call us. But I'm also getting calls from law enforcement officials throughout the entire state that say, we want you in, we have to change who the current sheriff is. The current sheriff has a reputation statewide as not being somebody that's cohesive to the rest of the group. And I have received these messages loud and clear. I've been contacted as far away as Montana. I've been contacted by former LASD sheriff's deputies that have told me things that are going on. So understand that, you know, I guess it's cyclical. So I don't know if you had any more on that question or.
No, it's I just know it's a tough thing in leadership, and because I have so many retired police officers that come in here, and so many current police officers come in here from Post Falls, Coeur d'Alene, Sheriff's, and not to be like, because I mean, everything that I've dealt with, you seem like a great guy. You seem like a guy I would have a beverage with or whatever.
Sure.
But everybody that comes in here is a Norris guy.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you.
And how many percentage of that?
I have no idea.
Because,
I'm just saying the ones that come in.
Yeah. Because I'm getting calls from Rathdrum PD telling me what's going on with the county. The county does not work with Rathdrum PD. In fact, Rathdrum PD is not allowed to go on stops to back county deputies on the line on the north and the west. And here's why. They're not allowed, because the sheriff's office will not allow them. The deputies, pardon me?
No automatic aid?
Yes, they don't. The deputies do not want Rathdrum to back them. There's this kind of pecking order, right? Pardon me?
That's foolish.
Yeah, and so I know firsthand that the chief of police at Spirit Lake, who's a former LAPD guy, he and his lieutenant, also from LAPD, the Sheriff Norris has never one time personally met with the chief of police at Spirit Lake. Not one time. I have that on direct authority. Now I have to ask you guys a question. If you're the sheriff of the entire Kootenai County region. You head up all law enforcement agencies because you are the chief law enforcement official, and you brag on camera that you get along very well with all Kootenai County law enforcement. Why would you not then be getting along and making inroads to have discussions with a chief up in Spirit Lake? Furthermore, why did he take their deputization cards away? So the deputization cards, this has been a hot topic. And under Idaho state law, for one agency to go outside of its jurisdiction, the sheriff has to cross-deputize them so that they can have jurisdiction to continue performing their duties. Now, Bob Norris has deputized dozens of Spokane Police Department officers, Spokane County deputies. There's one Liberty Lake officer. There's numerous agencies here in Kootenai County. There's federal agents. There's sheriffs from outside of our county, and yet he pulled those deputization cards from Spirit Lake PD and their 7-member force. Doesn't have an explanation. Originally, he said it was because there was no supervision, but in 6 months' time, there is more than competent supervision. And remember, these guys came in to fix a department that was failing. So these are highly seasoned, retired, top-tier lieutenants from LAPD who have come in and have done a very good job at leading the area for training and giving their guys the resources they need to be good, solid, constitutional-minded police officers. So 6 months' time, you've never gone and met with the chief up at Spirit Lake. Is that a little odd to you? And furthermore, there have been Spirit Lake cops that are close to a county call that could respond in minutes, and they've been told not to respond, and they would rather have a deputy come from deep south that are, 10, 15 minutes away. And let me ask, if you were the person calling 911, do you care who shows up? If you're in crisis, do you care who shows up? So back to your overall point, I understand that there's going to be pockets in our echo chambers of people that support him, but I assure you there are far more inside Kootenai County that do not support him than do. So the conversations I've had direct conversations, and I'm in the know exactly the dysfunction of the sheriff's office. The sheriff's office right now has a reputation of high bravado, elitism, doesn't play well with others. And I think that that's wrong. The sheriff's office should be the one leading the entire county. We should be able to provide whatever resources that we have in order to make other agencies successful, because as sheriff, yes, I enforce laws inside the county and each city has its own police department, but ultimately the entire safety of the community is the responsibility of the sheriff. And I would be providing whatever resources. I'd be coming up and saying, hey, Chief Dan Wilson, I know your reputation, this is your expertise here. What can the sheriff's office be doing to help you better perform your job? Right? And then, hey, you know what? I have a little bit of a deficiency here. What would your advice be? Could you come and help us? Because there should be a collaboration between all agencies. All of us in Kootenai County have the responsibility of protecting and securing the county. And there should be absolutely no elitism. There should be no arrogance. There should be no superiority that happens. We should be the servants of the people. It's a calling. It's not a competition.
Have you met with Dr. Duke?
I've not met with him personally.
What do you think about minors accessing alcohol or controlled substances?
What do I believe about it? Can you be more specific as far as?
Want to lower the
That's a more of a difficult conversation, because we don't know in this country, is an adult 18 or is it 21? So the federal government screwed us on that one, right? If it's illegal, it's illegal. And I think that we should be fixing things at the federal level to determine, is a minor 18 or is a minor, right? So I think that the federal government, because of the draft issue back during Vietnam, kind of screwed the people over on that.
So I have a statement from a listener and two questions.
All right.
So the first statement says, every state needs a sheriff like you.
Oh, thank you.
So the first question from a listener says, how will you approach your budget?
Yeah. So the way I'm going to approach the budget is, the very first thing I'm going to have a conversation with the county commissioners, and I'm going to request funding as one of my very first things when I am sworn in to audit, to find a firm to audit the sheriff's office from top to bottom, to find out where every dollar is being spent, and to forensically determine whether or not these budgets, these dollars being spent, are being spent correctly and with the most concern to the taxpayers that are funding this. And I think that once we find out where that money is going, then we will determine whether or not we need to allocate funds to different programs or move them around, or maybe we find out that we're wasting a lot of money. But until we find out, as a businessman, I have to routinely do audits of my business in order to find out where my deficiencies are. And that's what we need to be doing in the sheriff's office. Is we need to have, it's long overdue, a top to bottom audit of the entire operations.
Okay. Second question is, could you talk about the tax levy up in Hayden, and how do you plan on, so basically that, and will you try to work within your already existing budget like the rest of the citizens of Kootenai County, or will you tax us into oblivion like the present sheriff?
Well, I'm not a fan of taxes, period. I mean, I understand the necessity of them. We all live in a great area where we need to pay our share of maintaining our services and our roads. But I can tell you, as a businessman in the state of Idaho, as a property owner, I pay a hell of a lot of taxes. And I don't know anybody in here, if you're brave enough, please show your hand, that wants to pay more taxes. Why do we continually, at a government level, and this is my problem with career politicians that have never one time ever owned or ran a company. The measure of success for me as a businessman is success or failure, right? When your budget's here and you go over here, what happens? Right? So why is it in government, politicians' constant solution to every problem is not to cut things, not to prioritize, but to let's go to the citizens and let's ask them to please give us more money, because you don't want to go without police services, right? And we're going to put a gun to your head by saying, if you don't vote for us on these levies, then you may not get the 911 call response that you need. And I think it's kabuki theater. I think it's ridiculous, and I am sick to death of every solution being raise more taxes. Let's call it what needs to be done, and that is we need to prioritize and execute the priorities of what we need in order to facilitate us being able to live our lives, and everything else needs to go by the way of the axe if it's not needed.
If I'm understanding correctly, the current administration is trying to push laws and things toward the militias and the training and educational and organization thereof.
Yeah.
Thoughts and...
If the federal government is pushing something, I'm generally against it, and I think that we all know what they're trying to do. They do not want independent, liberty-minded men and women to at all be able to form themselves in order to protect their counties. And so let me be abundantly clear. I myself am not a militia guy, but I understand people's rights, their heritage, to be parts of militia, response-ready individuals to prepare themselves, their families, and their communities. And I think that any attempt by the federal government to prohibit something that should be a guarantee under the Constitution is wrong. And I would urge the state of Idaho, if that federal law is enacted, to nullify that law and to say, in Idaho, we're not playing that game, we're not recognizing it. Yep. Other questions? Anything online? Uh-oh. I know that I can be a controversial individual because, I'm daring to buck the system by challenging an existing sheriff. But understand that I think people need to recognize that in the state of Idaho, there's only 3 things required to be a sheriff. You must be 21 years of age, a citizen of the United States, and a citizen of the county that you are running as sheriff in for at least 1 year. And I can hear the gasps right now. Wait, what? Well, think about it. The sheriff is an elected representative of the people, from among the people. if the Idaho State Legislature thought that it was important for a sheriff to be a career cop that has gone from patrol to detective to SWAT to whatever, and you must be a cop for 30 years and have the big long handlebar mustache and that makes you sheriff material? No. It's a representative of the people. And we get a chance every 4 years to change this by individuals like myself that say, you know what? I don't like the way things are going. I'm going to step up. I'm going to put myself on the line. I knew the minute that I declared that I was running that I was going to get a lot of hate. Because nobody in their right mind primaries an existing sheriff that is loved by people. But I believed in what was going on to be so egregious to me that I couldn't stand by when no other men that had 20 or 30 years of law enforcement experience decided that they wanted to get up and do something. Now remember, the sheriff is the elected representative of the people that is in charge of the sheriff's office. But do you know who runs the day-to-day operations of the sheriff's office? The undersheriff. So what happens is you'll get these career politicians, like our county commissioner, I won't name his name, but they want to try to push out, this narrative that the only individual that is worthy and qualified to be a sheriff is somebody with a career law enforcement experience. And they're doing that and they're being disingenuous because the undersheriff actually runs the day-to-day operations of the county. That means that individual is and has been involved in law enforcement for a very long time. He takes the visions of the sheriff with the command staff and they execute those visions, those policies, those changes. Now, I think it's interesting that some of my biggest detractors, which I'm going to clear this up once and for all, I am not anti-California law enforcement. So I want to say this again. I am not anti-California law enforcement, never have been. But what I am concerned about is certain sections of California law enforcement, particularly from the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, that had, from the day that I started, continued to go on to every one of my social media platforms and promote the lies that I was not qualified to be a sheriff, and they spread propaganda. And I'm here to tell you that some of the quotes that were frequently copied and pasted onto our platform is, he has no command experience. You know what command experience is, if we're talking about from a technical standpoint? That's lieutenants and captains and majors and undersheriffs, not sergeants and corporals. But you know our current undersheriff, his highest rank was corporal. So what does that say? They're being disingenuous when they're trying to imply that somebody like myself, who I spent 12 years of my life giving to my community as a reserve officer, a patrolman who had, while I was working, full authority. I wore the same uniform as all my full-time patrolman friends did. But I performed these duties for 12 years. I gave back my time. I strapped on a Kevlar vest, I put on my shield, I put on my gun belt, my uniform, and I performed patrol duties at no cost to my community. I understand exactly the culture of law enforcement. And I understand the part that I love. I love the warrior culture because you need meat eaters to be able to go after the evil men in our community. But at the same time, I also understand some of the problems that happen inside of law enforcement agencies. And as a person that would go in and work several times per month, I had just enough experience to be able to see what's going on, but I wasn't sucked into some of the more negative aspects that sometimes happen with law enforcement. What great representative of the people, what better representative of the people can you find than somebody that not only is running a construction company for the past 24 plus years, experiences in multi-million-dollar budgets and personnel and hiring and firing and contract negotiations, but also understands at a line level what it's like to be a cop and understand how hard the job can be, how emotionally toiling the job can be. What better individual is there than myself right now to be able to perform the duties as an elected sheriff for Kootenai County in this time that we're facing?
You know, I just want to say that we need integrity and backbone far more than experience. So to that point, I don't know you.
Yeah.
Okay, and Bob
You're
Norris,
standing awful close though for somebody that doesn't know me.
Bob Norris is somebody that is really working at his own PR. I told him, you're really good at your own PR.
Well, all he does is campaigns nonstop.
Now, and we know him. He's served us. But for instance, when it comes to John Padula,
Yeah.
and when I met Dale Gibney, I just said, I don't know you, but I know John Padula. Now, why do we trust John Padula? We know him. We know his integrity, his backbone. We know he's a man of character. So tell us about that part of it.
My integrity?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, where do I begin? I mean, that's an open question.
Wherever you want.
Well, so here's something that I often get accused of. Well, what did you do during COVID in your capacity as a reserve officer to make a statement that you're not going to enforce any unconstitutional mandates? Well, these are the same people that, by the way, say I wasn't a real cop, so I don't know either way which way you want to swing it. But here's what I did. I was not a politician. I was a business owner. And I started seeing and my businesses are commercial construction and a commercial cabinet shop, and we were located in the Spokane Valley. When they started talking about 15 days to stop the spread, I knew immediately what they were attempting to do, which is they were trying to circumvent the Constitution. And when the edict came out to stop all production and everybody stay home, you're not essential, you know what I did? I gave the government the double middle finger and said, we're not stopping. And not only that, I talked to each of my employees and I said, if you are concerned, we will make arrangements to help you be safe, but we're not telling anybody that you're not essential and you're not going to work. So the entire scamdemic in 2020, not one time, and you can ask any of my employees, did I ever one time shut down operations. I did not operate in fear. I did not obey the edicts that were coming down. I had people to employ, people that needed to take care of their families, and that's exactly what we did the entire time. We never complied. We did not take, our dangerous liberty and turn it over for a certain security. And then fast forward a year later, when everybody was telling you must get jabbed. You guys remember that? You're gonna get fired. So it wasn't bad enough that you didn't have a job during the pandemic. Then a couple months later, when things started to kind of work again, then people were told, you either get the jab or you're not gonna be able to get a job. Now, I'm for personal liberty. If you want to take a vaccine, that is your own prerogative. But none of my employees in the field, I had some in the office that chose to, and that's fine, but my field guys, my tradesmen, were not vaccinated. And I had a contract with the state of Washington for a hospital remodel that I was working on. And about 2 months prior to the mandate taking effect in October of 21, where the governor said, you cannot be on any state property working without a vaccine. And I knew that my guys weren't vaccinated. And I never asked them why you're not vaccinated. It's none of my business. But when the state continued to come down and pressure me week after week, we want to know if you're going to be able to staff this project that you're under contract with us, if you're going to staff it with vaccinated individuals that meet the state dictate. And I told them, no, none of our field guys are vaccinated. They all have exemptions. And now the exemption was, I went to them and said, hey, if you want to declare an exemption, tell me. Verbally, that's it. I don't want it in writing. It's good enough. If you tell me that you're not taking it, whether it's religious or medical or a strongly held belief. So I went back to the state and I said, we cannot fulfill your request. And they said, well, you must, or you're going to be in breach of contract. You must provide vaccinated workers. And I told them that we will renegotiate the contract because the contract that I signed never had that stipulation. And it's going to take me some time to find individuals because in Washington State, the majority, well over 80% of tradesmen were not taking the vaccination. And I told the state of Washington, because they came back to me and said, your guys are claiming that they're exempt, but we want to be the final deciders. That's something I left out. So the state came in and said they wanted to be the deciders whether or not it was legitimate that somebody said, I have a First Amendment right to not participate in this vaccine. When it was all said and done, we told them to pound sand, and they eventually gave up and said, okay, fine, we won't renegotiate your contract, so you can find vaccinated individuals to meet our criteria, but your guys just can't go into this side of the hospital, right? So again, this was before I ever decided to run as a politician. I was standing up for my people's constitutional rights and who was going to suffer the penalties if the state ever came after me. Me. Not my employees, they're going to come after me. But I will tell you, I will never violate somebody else's sovereignty because of a government edict. And any man that does that today is no friend of mine. The current sheriff, back when the first pandemic started, we have videos, and you can see it on our social media page, where he was telling people, then candidate Bob Norris, trust the CDC, trust Panhandle Health, these trusted sources. And by the way, lecturing people for gathering in groups larger than, you know, what is it, 6 or 7 or 9 or 10 or whatever the number was. And he's sitting there giving us a lecture. Well, you know what? Your sheriff should have been discerning enough, even in the beginning, to not be overruled by fear, but to say, liberty always comes before a certain security. Dangerous liberty is what we Americans enjoy. So I knew before it all started what was going on, but our current sheriff, in retrospect, now knew what was going on, but he didn't have the right discernment prior, which means he does not understand liberty. Because if he truly understood liberty from a constitutional standpoint, he would have never, ever put those videos out. And I'm glad that he put those videos out because he showed us exactly how much he does not know about the Constitution.
I disagree with you on that. How many employees did you have, or do you have?
You asked me that last week, I think, right? Was that you? I've had up to 20 employees, and then multiple subcontractors and
About how many?
It's varied over the years, 25 years.
And does anyone know Sheriff Norris's command experience? What his?
Well, I don't, to the best of my knowledge, he's never actually showed us anything solid proof other than a couple certificates. I mean, we don't exactly know.
Fred?
I just got a question.
Yep.
I get those kind of questions a lot.
Yeah.
You did a great job.
Thank you.
I understand that Norris gave an honorary deputyship to Bruce Mattar.
Yes.
First of all, I didn't know you could do that kind of thing, but why would he do that?
That was my next question, actually.
Well, I'm glad that this question has been brought up, and I'd like to address it. I don't have a problem necessarily with the cross deputizations because the state law allows for that and requires it. It's a technicality. But when it comes to special deputizations, that's where you give a special deputy status to an individual that did not go through any kind of law enforcement academy, whether it was Belee in Washington or Post in Idaho. They didn't go through the process of being extensively background checked. They didn't go through the psychological or the polygraphs or any of that. You're giving police powers to an individual that has never been vetted. And that is something that is done widely through the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department. And that is part of the corruption that I'm talking about. It's a pay-to-play favor. So let me ask you, Bruce Matari right now is a county commissioner. He is part of the purse, part of government, separation of powers. Like Congress, the county commissioners control the budgets. The sheriff's office is the executive. We're supposed to have these separations of powers, and yet a sitting politician has access to information, and none of us knows what he knows about us in our life. Last week I spoke at the Panhandle Pachyderms, and during this time where I was speaking, Bruce Matari produced an incident report from an interaction that I had experienced in my home in Spokane 12 plus years earlier. My question is if we have a politician and he's actually working for my opposition, right, my opponent, as his campaign manager. So this is how messed up this is. Bob Norris is elected sheriff and sworn in 21. He then gives his former campaign manager, Bruce Matari, the special deputization. Bruce Matari then becomes a county commissioner. And he's got this special deputization. Leslie Duncan doesn't have a special deputization. Bill Brooks doesn't have a special deputization, but Bob's campaign manager is given this special deputization, and nobody knows what he's looking at. Nobody knows what access he has. Does he have access to Fusion Center information from down in Boise? What are these guys doing, and why are they doing it?
So that's the point. That's the point of opposition.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that the citizens of Kootenai County should be demanding today that Bob Norris stop this practice, do the right thing, and quit doing these pay-to-play schemes that you're doing. This is straight out of Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, and what you're doing is absolutely disgusting, and the people will not stand for it. I want everybody that hears me to call the Sheriff's Department to demand that this be righted. Politicians should not have access to police information. Thanks for that question.
Yeah. I was disgusted at the Pecketer meeting that you spoke at a week ago.
Yeah.
I was disgusted because there was an orchestrated attack about your character. And it was really disappointing to me to hear that those people would act that way.
Well, I appreciate that, and I think that, you know, we're in politics, so we understand, and I got to be able to weather that if I'm going to protect this county.
Yeah, you did a good job.
Well, thank you. And I'll tell you a couple funny things there. So obviously that last week I was requested to speak at the local pachyderms, and when I got there I realized that it was predominantly Bob Norris and his associates. And so the question and answer was a little bit over the top. There was a barrage of things and sound bites. But, you know, I thought it was interesting as I've been looking at the campaign filings, the financial filings from Bob Norris's campaign, and I noticed a couple interesting things. The Fernand Rod and Gun Club actually donated $2,000 to Bob Norris last month. One for the primary and another $1,000 for the general election, and then the owners, Smith, him and his wife, also donated $1,000 to Bob Norris. So $4,000 came from Fernand Rod and Gun Club, and he was one of those guys that was at the meeting asking some of those questions. And I think it's disingenuous when you have people that are giving large dollar donations, and we need to ask as citizens of Kootenai County, what is the payback for Fernand Rod and Gun Club? Maybe it's business. I don't know. I mean, I'd love for them to give me and the people an explanation as to why they're funding Bob Norris so much. Am I that much of a threat that they're concerned and they're throwing all their money out right now? But how much business does the sheriff's office do with Fernand Rod and Gun Club? And that was one of those individuals that were in there asking questions. So we knew what was going on, and I thought it was great because we got to expose people for what their agendas are. And the agendas aren't for truly securing the county, it is to keep their man at whatever cost in office. And I'm actually wear it as a badge of honor, the amount of opposition that I have received from Southern California. There's a large contingency of former LASD retirees that were friends of Bob's that want to see him continue to stay in office. And I have nothing against law enforcement from California, but a key group that is holding on to this office at whatever cost should concern all of us, and it should concern all other California former law enforcement officers in the community. If they're truly genuine in their belief that we want to keep Kootenai County the freest county in the entire country, then they need to start speaking out and combating these individuals that are attempting to hold on to Bob and his pay-to-play agenda. So.
It's not really a question, more of a statement, going back to capitalize on people being nervous or hesitant about their reserve status.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I can't speak on behalf of reserve officers, but in my experience, you know, I've spent my fair share overseas. I won't go into gory details, but times got rough for some of us, and the only thing that the U.S. could send was reserves. And yeah, everyone gave them ridicule and criticism, and we're all going to die because here comes a reservist train. But I'll tell you what, at the end of the day, when the dust settled, them boys came to play, and they offered more a well-rounded atmosphere because of their skills. I mean, we had teachers, we had lawyers, we had construction workers from all walks of life that signed up to go to war for $1,000 a month. You know, they're only required to train 2 weeks out of the year or something like that. That's not a lot of training, man. And to sign up, to sign your life away, write your will at 18 years old and run head first into the heat of danger, it takes a certain type of crazy. And I thought we were it, and then these guys showed up, and it was like, there is someone crazier than me and my boys. Holy shit, pardon the language. But they came to play, and they brought it. And so you have my vote, you know. That's not even a factor when I hear reserve. People put it in my ear and say, if you don't have the experience, don't talk about it, because you don't know what he can offer. You know, so willing to give you a chance, you know, as a reservist.
Well, thank you for saying that.
I want to back that up because I was active duty and we worked with a lot of reserves and guard guys. I'd stand alongside a guard or reserve guy way over most active duty guys. And this is back a few years. And there's a different breed that come out of the guard and reserves because they're there because they want to be. You know, a lot of active duty have come in and they come in for the education, they come in for the medical benefits, they come in for cheap groceries at the commissary, and they got all this stuff. And yeah, exactly. They don't want to go to prison. So yeah, I want to back him up. I'll stand alongside a guard or reserve guy any day of the week.
And I know that the high-speed law enforcement, these are the guys that understand the calling and are true servants for the people. They get that. And I had, when I was a reserve officer, I had outstanding support. I would go to hell with these guys if they said, look, we're locking and we're going. The ones that generally had the biggest problem were people that had this inferiority complex. They didn't understand how somebody that can be in a different profession could then come in and perform police functions competently for a time. And the guys that were the most insecure tended to have this philosophy. But I can tell you that at SPD, there were some outstanding cops. These guys were just like the model of what we think law enforcement should be. The most humble, welcoming individuals. Liberty Lake was a smaller agency, and I can tell you that I had such a good rapport with those guys that I call them brother to this day. I'm in frequent contact with them. So thank you for saying that, and thanks for bringing that point out.
Hopefully it gives a warm and fuzzy, you know.
Woo. Anybody else before I close up?
Thank you for having the backbone to stand up to Norris and run.
You're welcome.
We need it for this county. We need somebody good. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for saying that.
Even within, I've seen Coeur d'Alene police officers violate traffic laws. Just with no lights, no nothing, just turn right there to 3rd, 4th Street in front of Dave Smith. They'll sit there and look around. I'm like, are you serious? You're taking a job as a calling to work for the people. Doesn't matter the paycheck, you're doing it for calling, so you need to uphold standard. And I've seen a lot of Leos that are just not, you know, they think that badge is a crown, and it's not.
It's a calling.
And it's for citizens that spend the time studying the rules and the laws and stuff, and then when you start putting in, I had a sheriff's deputy in Latah County pull me over because my license plate's in my front window. As a logger, I've ripped so many license plates off. He pulled me over, and I'm like, you show me the state statute. What is it? State statute. Visible from the front of the vehicle, 75 yards away. Doesn't say it has to be on the front of the bumper. Want to write me a ticket? Fine, write me a ticket. I'll see you in court. Let me go, but I mean, it's you just had that. I have a crown, I have a badge, so I have a crown, I have a mentality. I'm gonna write the ticket, and they don't like that when citizens hold them accountable.
It comes back to a culture thing, right? And that's, we're going to change. I have actually somebody tapped. People have asked me who's my undersheriff, and I'm not going to disclose that. But I definitely have the individual that I'm bringing in, career law enforcement that understands the warrior culture and how it relates to being defenders of people's rights. And he's going to be coming in and assisting me and helping to restore a culture of calling to our agency.
What's the best way to follow you, get a hold of you, stay up to date with where you're at, what you're doing, what you're talking? What's the best way to stay with you?
Wow. First, thanks for that prompt, because I needed that. I would have forgotten. TheIdahoSheriff.com. TheIdahoSheriff.com. Pardon me? Doesn't matter. Upper, lowercase. You type in TheIdahoSheriff.com, and what that'll do is that'll take you to our page. It has everything from my bio, what my priorities are. You can join up my campaign posse. We have videos. I mean, it's very robust. We also are on every social media platform: X, Instagram, Facebook, and it's the same handle, The Idaho Sheriff. So come and see what we're doing. I would appreciate if you like what I'm saying, not only to like and comment, but also to spread it. Share the message. I've had supporters here locally because somebody in California or Southern Idaho saw my post and sent it to family up here. So again, this is all of us collectively. We don't have another 4 years. We should have been getting ready 3 years ago for this day that we're living in. We should have had a citizen posse already well underway. We should have had a reserve officer program well underway. But we haven't. And the detractors want to say, well, you're talking about a reserve academy. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about individuals, former law enforcement, that still fit in the category of being able to jump in and fulfill a role as reserve officer. But we had all these years to get ready. We haven't got ready. There's a lot coming at us. If we truly believe that Kootenai County can be that shining city on a hill for the rest of the country to see how a free county operates, it's going to take a lot of hard work. We're going to have to band together under the common cause of liberty. We're going to have to put our petty disagreements aside because we have much greater things. We're going to need everybody's expertise. You guys are all in charge of your security, not just the sheriff's office. But I can tell you, be strong and of good courage, because we did not descend from fearful men, but we descended from men who understood the times they lived in, and they acted accordingly, and they dedicated their lives, their fortunes, because of their sacred liberty. And I want you to join with me, joining with your sacred honor, your liberty, in helping us take the office of sheriff to secure it for us and for our future generations. So thank you all for coming out.
What would be the chance of getting you guys on stage debating? Because then it's like all the questions that people have, like all the haters, all the, you know, like they can all be in the audience and just like fire the questions. Like,
I'm ready.
So you're willing to do
I'm ready right now.
Ask Norris if he's ready to do it?
We've had some that have already reached out.
Like, what's his excuse to not
Well,
do
because
that?
Bruce Matari can't debate for him. So Bruce Matari, if Bruce could debate for him, he'd do it in a heartbeat. But since he can't, I don't think he wants to debate me.
So is that something that would be helpful to kind of really like bring out and bring forward? Like, hey, you know, we're going to host a debate. You know, everyone has these opinions of you and opinions of Norris, and you know, one of the big things that comes out is like, well, isn't Norris doing a good job? Why would we need him? You know, and so they can ask all these questions on a stage in front of people where they're having to answer these questions. I think it would be very beneficial, but it's probably for the same reason that they won't let certain people on the national stage to debate either, because they know they're going to get eaten up.
Yeah, I'm ready. Did everybody get coffee?
Yes, thank you.
If you didn't, I think we have some more tickets. Grab tickets, pass out, get coffee. You guys want it, you can pass them around. Thank you guys all for coming. And take care. Dan Wilson.
Josh.
Pleasure to meet you, Josh. Okay, which one's your cousin, Jeremy?
Jeremy Gleason.
Oh yeah, I love Jeremy. Yeah, good dude.
Okay, you guys, so hold on. Turn it my way so you guys can see my ugly. So there you guys have it. So here's the thing. If you guys know people in Idaho, if you like what Dan is talking about, get the message out, share with people. I definitely like him. I've talked to him. I've been around him. We talk quite often, and again, it kind of goes back to the whole Trump thing. Trump wasn't a politician, and we knew that. Trump was a businessman. And it's the same with Dan. He's a businessman. So for me and myself, as you guys know, I'm not into the establishment whatsoever. And I don't, from you guys hearing what Dan is saying, from you guys knowing me, it appears that he's not either, especially as a reserve, working for free, going into it, just like another gentleman was talking about, how he has, the high most respect for reserves. So I think he's a man that's about the community. Does he know everything? I'm not saying he does know everything. But again, I'm going to say this. and we, as patriots, we should know this. The police force has been crooked. Yes, there's good cops, but we've seen what they've done to patriots. We see who they work for. We see what's gone on behind the scenes. So we've seen all that type of stuff. We've seen what the police have done to J6. We see who they work for. Not many police officers walk away from their jobs because, we believe in the Constitution, or we stand for the American people, or we stand for patriots. Not many officers walk away and say, we're not going to do this. Most because they have a job. It's kind of like my situation that happened when I was in Portland. I was willing to be a sacrificial lamb. I'm like, I'm not taking a jab. I'm not taking weekly tests. I get fired for it. Not many people are going to do that because they have families. Yet, proven thing, Dan Wilson, he stood his ground when it came to the tyranny, when it came to all that type of stuff, he stood his ground. So, to me, he sounds like a stand-up dude. I like him. I'm more than likely going to vote for him. So, I guess if you want to say he has my endorsement, then he has my endorsement. It is what it is. It sounds like there's a lot of other people that have been in Kootenai County a long time. Sounds like they are going to be voting for him as well. And there's other things I'm seeing and noticing that I don't myself align with. I don't align myself or fellowship, break bread, shake hands with Masons. If we're all about the whole woke agenda and what wokeness is and all this type of stuff that we as patriots and conservatives and Christians complain about, that we know that there's a dark, deep thing in regards to the Masonry and Illuminati and all this type of stuff. Yeah, you can say it's a conspiracy theory, but there's too many testimonies out there. There's too much footage out there of black and white checkerboard floors and rituals. I'm not going to be shaking hands with those people who aren't following Jesus Christ, not God, okay? Because the word God can be thrown around too easily. I'm talking about Jesus Christ, the Savior, okay? The one who shedded his blood on the cross, sacrificed, rose again in 3 days to give us eternal life, salvation. That's what I'm talking about, not just God. The word God is thrown around too much by quote-unquote conservatives and patriots. So with that said, I'm not going to shake hands with those type of people. I'm not going to go into facilities. Personally myself, hey, you can do what you want, but personally myself, I'm not going to go I'm going to go into these facilities, okay? Because there are spiritual things in places. Just like there's spiritual things in a congregation of born-again believers. There's spiritual things in buildings that do rituals. And it is a fact. It's not just conspiracies. You can find the stuff online, do your research, look around. We all know about Masons. So for me personally, I know things that I'm not going to align myself with personally. So, that's kind of a side note. That's just some stuff I've been looking into for me personally that I know. And I've even been contacted by leaders of Masonic temples that are part of police force and now even Secret Service. So I'm just saying, there's stuff there. The police aren't as innocent. Reverend Gunn says that Mason in my short, I put up a couple shorts from a week ago. He gave me a dirty look. Of course he gave me a dirty look because he came from a Masonic temple where the leader, who is a part of a law enforcement that is, because law enforcement is under the sheriff, correct? Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't law enforcement under sheriff? So a particular law enforcement, this guy works for a particular law enforcement. The Mason guy contacted me, who is in law enforcement. So that's from the same temple of the guy who gave me a dirty look. So if I come up missing, just saying. No, I got God on my side. I ain't worried about any of them. None. Nathan, none of them. So, but yeah, again, if you guys like what Dan is saying, give him a follow or whatever you want to do, help support him. But again, at the end of the day, just like I said, with Trump, he wasn't a career politician. He was a businessman, and we all like that. We all like that. He was not a career politician, and he was a businessman, and he wasn't a part of the establishment. Most law enforcement, most police, as Dan was talking about, is part of an establishment. You've been established. People want your experience, your background, how long you've been doing it, so on. That's part of the law enforcement establishment. So I'm just saying that. So anyway, I'm going to get out of here. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for you guys who did Super Chat, who donated. I appreciate it very, very much. Denise Green, thank you. Denise said, why isn't Dan Wilson running for Congress or something like that? She also said that. So thank you guys very much for the support. Appreciate you guys. God bless you. Continue liking the shorts that I put up, please. Continue to share them. So I'll talk to you guys soon. God bless.